Hi, this is Adam Feinberg. You are listening to Harlem Stories. Well, thank you for your listenership, and we've seen listenership statistics rise, and that tells us we're doing something that people want to listen to. I recognize that this is a niche area, not only New York City real estate, but further, we focus on the neighborhoods uptown, Upper Manhattan. So, again, thank you for your time, your attention. We really appreciate the fact that, that the podcast is growing in terms of number of listeners. Really appreciate it. And, hopefully we are answering a lot of your questions about the neighborhoods and, also a lot of real estate buying and selling type of issues as well. So hopefully we're bringing a tremendous amount of value to the equation and, for your listening pleasure. Today we're going to discuss a neighborhood that we haven't discussed previously in any of our episodes, I believe, but East Harlem. This episode is a bit more of a challenge for me personally to work on. I've lived in Hamilton Heights, or West Harlem portion of it, for nearly 19 years, and I've had family history in both Central and West Harlem. So naturally, my background has always been light on the east side of the island, with the rare exception of when I lived on Union Square during my college years. And that's a little bit more central to the island, even though it's got east addresses. But from an agent's point of view, I naturally focus my business on areas that were easier and quicker to get from point A to point B. Sure, I've had clients that have wanted to view properties in East Harlem. I'm sure I'll do some sales there at some point, but nothing has come to fruition today in East Harlem. So it really comes down to, on those Sundays when I'm working with 3 different clients and I've got to get from point A to point B, and then, client 1 to client 2 to client 3. So a lot of times, traveling over, the entire length of the island, very time consuming and might not necessarily have time for it. So I haven't always really been focusing my business on East Harlem for that reason. But just as important to the history of Manhattan, East Harlem, it's also known as El Barrio or Spanish Harlem. And some say there are 2 different neighborhoods, but Spanish Harlem, El Barrio, south of 116th Street, and East Harlem is north of 116th Street. And then, there might even be a third category there of, the old world Italian Harlem. And today, most people know it that way because of 2 restaurants, Patsy's, which is one of the earliest pizzerias, and Rao's, which is known forever as, the kind of place that you can't get into unless you're famous and wealthy or both. And even then you might not still get in. So only having a few tables, but old world neighborhood classics. But just to describe a little bit more in depth to understand really what we're talking about, the borders of East Harlem, it's often argued but the most consensus is the neighborhood is most easily defined as the eastern border is, Harlem and the East River. That's not disputed at all. The southern border, 96th Street, rarely disputed other than a portion of 97th Street on north to the Central Park, closest to Central Park area over that, area over there. Northern border, the island tapers significantly north of 120th Street and follows the Harlem River northward, continuing tapering all the way north to 142nd Street. So ultimately, I think, that is really where the northern border is considered, not really at 142nd Street. But it's really, over here, and this is the contentious part over here. I'm a purist, and I believe that Fifth Avenue is the eastern border for the neighborhood, but others will argue that at least part of the eastern border will be Park Avenue. And for those that are carving out part of the eastern border, they also believe that a section is considered Upper Carnegie Hill on the Upper East Side, and they have expanded the border to include this as part of Central Harlem. So I think like Street Easy, they have, I think they've got Park Avenue as being the border of East Harlem, and Central Harlem But again, I view Fifth Avenue as East Harlem. It could be disputed, it could be argued over, but today I just want to at least let you know, what parts are being disputed and where, the generally accepted borders are considered. Getting a little into the history, East Harlem was still rural for most of the 19th century. Residential settlements started developing northeast of 3rd Avenue and 110th Street by the 1860s. By 1880, the construction of an elevated transit line was completed, and the Lexington Avenue subway by 1919. It urbanized the area, which borough apartment buildings and brownstones. By the 1880s, an Italian shantytown by the East River, starting around 106th, expanding north to 115th Street and west toward 3rd Avenue. So I mentioned about, that Italian section of East Harlem, and, there's still that, pocket of that area. The neighborhood continued to attract pockets of poor, working class, and ethnically diverse settlements: Italian, German, Irish, Eastern European, Jewish. The more affluent Jewish community migrated more toward the Central and West Harlem, while the poorer group moved to East Harlem. And again, we're just going on the history. East Harlem was definitely and continues to be the less financially successful, portion of Upper Manhattan. Even though that's starting to change and really improve with the construction of some luxury condo developments, at the same time, the larger, broader neighborhood is still, economically challenged. And it's a poor section of the area. Southern Italians and Sicilians, with a moderate number of Northern Italians, who predominated the area east of Lexington Avenue between 96th and 116th, and east of Madison Avenue between 116th and 125th, with each street featuring people from different regions of Italy. So, that was an important thing. The neighborhood became known as Italian Harlem, the Italian-American hub of Manhattan, and it was the first part of Manhattan referred to as Little Italy. The first Italians arrived in East Harlem in 1878 from, and pardon anybody that's Italian or influenced by it, pardon my likely butchering of the pronunciation, from Polio in the province of Salerno, and settled in the vicinity of 115th Street. There were many crime syndicates in Italian Harlem, from the early Black Hand to the bigger and more organized Italian gangs that formed the Italian Mafia, Italian-American Mafia. It was the founding location of the Genovese crime family, one of the five families that dominated organized crime in New York City. This included the 116th Street crew of the Genovese family. During the 1970s, Italian East Harlem was also home to Italian-American drug gang and murder-for-hire crew known as the East Harlem Purple Gang. In the 1930 census, it showed that 81% of the population of Italian Harlem consisted of first and second generation Italian Americans, somewhat less than the concentration of Italian Americans in the Lower East Side's Little Italy, with 88%. Italian Harlem's total population, however, was 3 times that of Little Italy. After World War I, there was a large and growing number of Puerto Ricans that moved into the neighborhood, especially around 110th Street, which later became known as Spanish Harlem or El Barrio. In 1941, the population was growing incredibly rapidly, and New York City Housing Authority built its first community housing project in East Harlem. Over the next 30 years or so, the city built 24 NYCHA, or New York City Housing Authority, housing developments in the area. The thought at the time was to help create public space for small hyper-local parks and recreational areas. Most of the Italian families left the neighborhood as it went up in flames in the 1970s race riots and a spike in arson. This created a large number of vacant lots and homes, which the city claimed, and then turned them into low-income housing. This in turn resulted in one of the highest geographic concentrations for low-income housing projects in the nation. ironically next to one of the highest income neighborhoods, that being the Upper East Side. Decades have since passed, and today we see a neighborhood that is slowly revitalizing and to some degree gentrifying, though the sheer concentration of low-income housing means that the neighborhood won't change dramatically overnight. So these are, a couple of the, important things that go on here. So, let's see. So in terms of academics and breaking things down, you have the New York Academy of Medicine, you have New York Medical College, you have Silberman School of Social Work at Hunter College, which is relatively new. Museums and cultural institutions in the neighborhood. You have Museo del Barrio, Museum of the City of New York, National Black Theater. For parks, you have Marcus Garvey / Mount Morris Park. People know that park as different names. It's on the border of Central Harlem, too. You've got Central Park on the border edge of it, and Jefferson Park as well. Architectural and housing. So as I mentioned, there's a large number of NYCHA developments throughout East Harlem. There are some townhouses and brownstones that remain, many of which have been chopped up into multifamily housing, but some 1- and 2-family homes remain. In 2019, the oldest portion of the neighborhood, the blocks of East 111th through 120th Street between Park and Pleasant Avenues, was listed on National Register of Historic Places as East Harlem Historic District. There's also Sylvan Court. It's an unpaved and demapped. Little Sylvan Court is a half-block blind alley off 121st Street between Lexington and 3rd Avenues. It's an extension of the equally obscure Sylvan Place, which runs from 120th to 121st Street. The 2-story houses in Sylvan Court were probably used as stables in the late 1800s, when Harlem was more of a sleepy village than the expansive urban neighborhood it had become in the early 20th century. And just so you know, Sylvan Court is not to be confused with Sylvan Terrace in Washington Heights, which is next to the Morris Drumel Mansion. And we've talked about that in past episodes. Condos and co-ops. Most of the co-ops in East Harlem are income restricted, though there aren't a lot of co-op apartments that are available for purchase at any single point in time. So high inventory there is low inventory everywhere else. Most of the condos in East Harlem, they've been constructed post-2000, which is not a surprise considering the changing environment of the last couple of decades. Some other points of interest that are worth mentioning over here is Keith Haring's, their Crack is Whack mural. Rouse, I mentioned earlier. Patsy's Pizzeria, I mentioned earlier. And generally speaking, it's known for its Latin American and Caribbean restaurants. For those that are doing, large shopping trips, it's home of the only Costco in Manhattan at 117th, right off the East River. The neighborhood is home to one of the few major television studios north of Midtown. Metropolis at 106th and Park Avenue, where shows such as BET's 106 and Park and Chappelle's Show have been produced. So, also known prdream.com, it's a website for the history and culture of Puerto Ricans. They founded a media gallery and digital film studio called Media Noche in 2003. It represents technology-based art on Park Avenue and 102nd Street. It provides exhibition space and residencies for artists and filmmakers and webcasting events. Now, just like all of Manhattan over here, there's a lot of famous residents. Frank Costello, Fiolo LaGuardia, our original early mayors. Al Pacino, well known to be from East Harlem. The singer Mark Anthony, ASAP Rocky, the rapper. Joe Budden, the rapper. And Bobby Darin, he was the singer. Eric Estrada, for those of you that remember Chips from the 1970s on TV. Langston Hughes, a well-known writer and social activist. Burke Lancaster, Tommy Lucchese, mobster. Edward Mossberg, the Polish-American Holocaust survivor, educator, and philanthropist. The painter Alice Neal, Tito Puente. Anthony Salerno, another mobster. Jonas Salk, the biologist that developed the polio vaccine, who also attended City College. Tupac Shakur, rapper and actor, which makes sense considering I grew up in Rockland, and Tupac's father was part of a Wells Fargo bank heist, and ultimately that makes sense now that that they had this East Coast connection, because Tupac is best known for his West Coast connection. Ronnie Spector and the Ronettes, the singers. Joseph Vallecci, the gangster, notable as the first member of the American Mafia to publicly acknowledge its existence, and credited with the popularization of the term Cosa Nostra. And and also you can find the Langston Hughes home on East 129th. Among the things to see and do in the neighborhood. I'm sure I'm leaving out a tremendous amount of interesting tidbits on East Harlem, and we'll probably explore the topics a little deeper as we go through the Harlem Stories podcast over time. But I want to, take this time, just do a little housekeeping, just let you know that the podcast is bi-weekly, and we really appreciate it. We take time off during the winter break and during the summer, and we try and give you at least a nice fill of time, so that we can do adequate research for some of our more interesting, unique stories, but also gather facts for, just getting to know the neighborhoods and try and gather all that together for you. All that takes time. This is an unpaid gig, but obviously my feeling is that if I'm going to be working in these neighborhoods, I should help, people understand more about them. So thank you for your time and listening to the Harlem Stories podcast. I hope that you continue to listen. Thank you. Have a great day.